Okay, hello, Dr. Wilde. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you here. Did you did you come through Corey?
I did.
Oh, all right. Okay, because we had a few that came through Corey. He referred people to our show, and we appreciate that from Corey. So, what is Corey's relationship with you?
I belong to one of his Blue Talks groups and am in one of his compilation books as well.
Yeah, he's been on the show, I think, once or twice, and great guy, always very entertaining. He's got a lot to
Yeah.
offer. And so do you, by the looks of your bio. I'm just going to read the first paragraph here, if you don't mind. Ivy League educated naturopathic physician, author, mother, inventor, adventurer, hypnotherapist, naturalist, innovator, and the first woman in history to go to the Antarctica with no supplies. Okay,
Yes.
okay, please tell us that story.
I love this story. So I went on an entrepreneurial group to raise awareness. It's a group trip to raise awareness about the impacts of the global weather on krill and the biological impacts of that, as far as the Antarctic being our air conditioner for the planet. And on my way there, which takes a really long time to get down there, the airline lost my luggage. And so here I was slotted to go on this incredible trip. I traveled from, the northern hemisphere all the way down to the bottom of Chile, and my luggage was gone. And so I was able to have a really interesting exercise in faith, and recognizing that I could go to the end of the earth with basically nothing and be provided for. So the other people on the trip shared clothes and socks and shoes and all kinds of things so that I could continue to enjoy the trip. So I went with basically nothing.
Well, I've seen a couple of documentaries of people who have traveled there. I mean, it's not exactly set up for tourists, is it?
Oh,
There's
there's nothing.
there's nothing. There's no hotels. There's not
Nope.
no.
Nope.
So,
It was probably, I've been all around the world and it was the best trip of my life. There's nothing. It's silent. It's clean. There's not a piece of garbage anywhere. There's no cars, there's no people, there's really very, very few boats. It is an absolutely incredible experience.
so where do you stay when you're there?
We stayed on a cruise ship. You don't even stay, like, you'll make landings onto the continent and onto the different islands to see, but you stay on a boat because there's nothing. There's no hotels. There's some remnants of cabins that shipwrecked sailors stayed in for years. Can't even imagine it, right? Like, they built it out of stones and stayed 20 guys in a small cabin through the Antarctic. It was just incredible.
So did you actually go to the South Pole?
No, no. We just landed at the very top of the continent, um, because it's massive. It's a very, very big, and you have to do, I think it's a 2-week trek in to get to the South Pole.
Oh
I would
wow.
love to do that sometime.
Yeah. It sounds like an amazing adventure. Well, I'm glad
Yes.
you survived and came back to tell us the
Yeah,
story.
it was pretty funny.
So you're here to promote a book. How many books have you published at this point?
Two.
Two
Well,
books.
three if you count with Corey's.
Oh, all right. So the latest one is called The Wilde Way.
Yes.
All right. Give us a little bit of a book description, if you would. What is this about?
So it is about how to live a healthy, optimized life in the 21st century. So we've got chronic diseases that are just skyrocketing. You've got, autoimmune diseases, autism, neurological problems, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. We've got so many different chronic things that conventional care really can't prevent or manage, right? Like, they're really good at crisis care. If you have a heart attack, those are the guys that you really want on your team to save you. But there's really very, very little that is done in conventional medicine in order to prevent or treat that. And there's three main drivers of chronic disease, and that's stress, inflammation, and toxicity. And this book is largely about what you can do at home through lifestyle, dietary, supplemental changes in order to decrease the likelihood of you developing these terrible chronic diseases. And it's a step-by-step guide through how you can really get in touch with yourself and value your health and commit to doing self-care and unravel not only the neurological and habit things that you do in order to sabotage your health and yourself, but also how do you detoxify the chemicals out of your system. So it's a holistic detoxification of mind, body, environment, and emotions.
Does this include like things like meditation and
Yes.
a particular diet that you might have to go on?
Not necessarily a particular diet, because everybody is everybody is different. And so what my diet looks like that's best for me is not necessarily the same diet that's best for you. And so there are tools in there given to help people find the best diet specific for them. That's why there's 80,000 diet books. It's because, none of them work for everyone. And so really it's a book about how to get in touch with your own body and start to listen to your own body so that you can optimize and heal it.
What about mental health?
There's definitely part of it with mental health. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't go too much into it, but there's ways to feed your mental health, like supplements that are supportive of how you can optimize your brain function, but also how you can disconnect from negative patterning and negative thought processes. So it's a first step. So it's included, but it doesn't go very deep into the mental health aspect of it, because that's a whole iceberg.
Do you think that the technology is sort of adding to the stress in our life, that people are constantly craving to be on their social media and they can't keep their phone sitting on the table for more than 2 minutes?
Absolutely. I don't know whether it was on purpose or accidental, but it was completely designed to be very addictive. So they're dopamine dumps that happen. It's shortening attention span. We've seen in children how it can actually create nearsightedness in children, as well as ADD, ADHD symptoms. And so you're programming entire generations and cultures to have very, very short attention spans. And it's the dopamine hits that are wired into the brain as far as, scrolling and swiping have dopamine actions in the brain that make them very addictive. And then there's the whole aspect of, the social pressures that come about it, and the lack of actual social interactions, and lack of eye contact, and lack of true social connections.
True human contact. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody is going through a filter.
Yes. Even so, like the, eye contact that I'm making right now with the camera, and you were talking about it a little bit earlier during setup, when humans make eye contact with each other, with dogs, even cats, but there's no research on that. But when you do it, you create an oxytocin bond that adds to bonding and connection with another person. But when we're all on screens all the time, our eyes are always offset. And so we're not actually making the eye contact necessary to have that oxytocin, which is a relaxing neurotransmitter. It helps with PTSD, it helps with stress levels, etc. So it's a very interesting problem, and I absolutely believe technology is a big part of it. And I believe that the further we get from nature, the more ill we become. And so there's ways to heal ourselves and each other by getting back to natural interactions, whether it's go outside, get sunshine, get your vitamin D, connect with people in the real world, walk on the ground for grounding, eat natural foods that aren't processed.
I see toxic relationships here in the book description. Can you sort of define what that is a little bit, and how your book is going to help people to, I mean, it sounds like you would just dump your partner if you perceive them as being toxic to you, but it's not that simple.
It's really not that simple. And just because you don't get along with someone doesn't mean that they're a toxic narcissist. right? And there's an absolute aspect of accountability and recognizing how you're showing up to create the experience in the relationship that you're having. However, if there's someone that continually, I see this a lot in practice when people start to lose weight and they start to feel better, there are others around them that will start being very negative in order to, keep that person in their safe zone of where they feel comfortable interacting with them. I see it all the time. It's like, well, you shouldn't lose too much weight, or you shouldn't work out so hard, or all these things that you shouldn't do. And we call it the rats in the bucket, right? Where, if you put a bunch of rats in a bucket, none of them will escape, because if one gets close, the others will pull it back in. And so I think that there's an aspect of recognizing who is really your cheerleader and who is more negative in your life, and whether you want that interaction to be one of your foremost. They say that you're the compilation of the 6 people that you spend the most time with. And so who do you want to be like? And there's definitely an aspect of healing and connection that happens in our closest relationships. And our family relationships are part of that. And so I've gone back and forth with different, family members in our collaborative healing, and how we all teach each other how to be our best selves if we're open to it. And so it's not about leave everybody that's toxic, that tells you that, you can't make $100,000 being an influencer online. It's a lot more nuanced than that. It's like, who's really supportive of your health and wellness and you making the best choices for you, and what does that look like? Because it's different for everyone.
Well, and then with family, I mean, you don't get to choose your family. And if you have a toxic family member, that can be very challenging because you really can't avoid them.
Right. But there's ways to insulate yourself from it, I think, with perspective and, emotional work. When we work on our own shadow work, we become less reactive to others' behaviors.
Well, I've heard that before, where you may not be able to change their behavior, but you change how you react to it.
Yes,
Okay. Has the book been released?
it has. It's on Amazon.
Okay. How long has it been out?
Since November of last year, I think.
Oh, so
God, time
over.
flies so fast. Yeah, so it's been a year. It's been out since November of last year.
Okay. What kind of reviews are you getting?
People love it. I haven't advertised it very much or leveraged it, but in the work that I've been doing, like, it's got all 5-star reviews. I get messages from people all the time about how they really loved it. It's better than I thought it. It turned out better than I thought it would,
Oh,
as far
great.
as how is it was received.
Are you planning on writing any more?
Probably. I think my next one's going to be about fertility, because we have a epidemic of young people having problems getting pregnant, and largely that's because of the toxic soup that we all swim in, right? So we can talk about the mental toxicity and the relationship toxicity, but the fact is we are in a chemical soup of toxins, even in LA now, right? Like, think about all that stuff that's burning, that's in
Oh,
the air that people are breathing, right? Like, you've got lead and asbestos and arsenic and polyaromatic hydrocarbons and all plastics, and just insane, right? And the lungs are a very absorptive surface. And so you're putting all of those things into your body. But that's what we see in this extreme case, but it's all the time, right? Like, we know that toxicity in the air and air pollution can make diabetes symptoms worse, right? So it's a very holistic thing that you're driving around in the most magnificent machine known to the, known universe, and we don't really know how to drive it. And then when you are filling it with pesticides and toxicity, it makes everything more difficult. And you don't want to create a child out of a toxic environment. And so that's why a lot of people are having fertility issues. And there's the stress aspects of it as well. But the toxicities turn on epigenetic switches that can make it more difficult. So I think my next book is going to be about how to have happy, healthy children in a world that is so incredibly toxic. And so how do you optimize that?
It sounds very interesting. And with that, we got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The new book is called The Wilde Way. Last question, do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure, it's naturopathicmd.com.
Okay, we'll put it up on the screen. Again, thank you very much for coming on the show and best of luck.